Essential Quality off the top of the turn, and he's opened up a 2-length lead, but Spielberg is running a massive race after him in second. Jackie's Warrior has been defeated. It is Essential Quality and Spielberg 1-2 a 16th out, and Essential Quality is just too good. Essential Quality, the champion, wins the Southwest.
Welcome back to Racing Rundown here on YouTube. Today we're going to be bringing back sort of a revival of a series that we began at the end of 2020, and unfortunately we're not able to get uploads to it done consistently, but I fixed issues on my end that prevented consistent uploads, and we're going to be back, and for every week now, going onwards until the Kentucky Derby, we're going to have a recap of the prep races from the past weekend. And we're going to start off with recapping the month of February. On this March 1st, we got 2 months officially until the Kentucky Derby, so it's getting much, much closer. Very exciting. This is a very exciting crop of horses and some very good prospects. So, like I mentioned, we're going to go through the top 5 performances on the Kentucky Derby Trail from the month of February 2021, I should say, and then we'll rank those in order from 5th to 1st, in order of 5th obviously being the least impressive of the top 5 and 1 being the most impressive. And then at the end we will give our overall top 5, and that's building off of what we said in the first video, which was at the end of 2020. So the first horse that we're going to start out with is Mandalon, the winner of the Risen Star on February 13th. This is a horse for Brad Cox, one of his many horses, and a name you'll hear later on in this segment for obvious reasons. The winner of the Risen Star, length and a quarter winner for him. Before that, he had been winner of his maiden breaking effort at Keeneland, and then an allowance race on the 28th of November. He was third in the Lecomte Stakes, but he did get much better effort in the Risen Star Stakes. Was sitting relatively close throughout the whole way. That was a track that wasn't really playing too well to closers. There were some nice horses that ran in behind him underneath, but ultimately he was in a lot better position than he was in the Lecomte Stakes, which was his one loss of his career. Good effort for him there. And Fairgrounds, if we're forecasting a little bit ahead to the Louisiana Derby, which is assuming where the next start is for him, that's one of the lighter divisions on the Kentucky Derby Trail. Doesn't really have a clear-cut superstar on it. There's some good horses down there. No one has really established himself yet. And Mandalon is definitely a horse that is going to be a really good, really strong contender for that Louisiana Derby title. And obviously, as we have stated, we think he is going to be a real force on the Kentucky Derby Trail. And from the month of February, he is the 5th most impressive.
On to number 4 now. That's where we have Chad Brown's risk-taking. And one theme that we've continually mentioned with this horse in our podcast episodes is this horse is trained by Chad Brown, who's not very common to see his name on the Derby Trail, but when he has a horse, they're usually a serious contender. Risk-taking won his graded stakes debut, his first start against winners earlier in February when he took out the Grade 3 Withers at Aqueduct. This was a huge effort. He improved in every sense of the word. He's had a really good trip coming from behind, which is always a nice thing to see with an up-and-coming 3-year-old, as a horse that has ability to sit off the pace and close. And he drew away very nicely. Won the Withers by just under 4 lengths. Definitely one of the weaker prep races of February on the Derby Trail in terms of quality. Not too many great horses in behind it, but risk-taking did enough in my eyes to certainly put himself in serious contention for the Derby, and now he's going to go forward into the Wood Memorial, his next confirmed start, where the field's not going to be too much tougher. So he could very well pick up another big win on the road to the Derby, surely taking an easier route, but whatever he can do to make the starting gate, that's the most important thing. Great pedigree behind this horse, I might add, to get the 1.25 miles. And Chad Brown, he's good at everything, and when he has a good horse on the Derby Trail, you have to take him seriously, which makes it pretty easy to include risk-taking in this month's top 5, as well as put him at 4.
And now moving on to the number 3 horse, we have Medina Spirit for Bob Baffert. He's got a few really promising horses on the Kentucky Derby Trail. We're not going to be able to talk about every single one of them in this top 5, but Medina Spirit of the month of February, his his most impressive performer, at least in the month of February. And if you look at his career, 2 for 3 in that one loss was a second place effort behind Life is Good, who is still a really highly regarded horse on the Kentucky Derby Trail for Bob Baffert. Talking about Medina Spirit, though, not to get off on a Life is Good tangent, Medina Spirit broke his maiden by 3 lengths, then came back in the Sham, which was a mile at Santa Anita, and ran a really strong second place finish behind Life is Good. Life is Good looked like he was beginning to tire a little bit, also looked a little bit green in that Sham Stakes, and it was, like I mentioned, only a mile. The extra distance may have helped him there. If the Sham was a mile and a 16th, may have gotten by, but that's really irrelevant. If you look at his next start, the Robert Lewis, which is obviously his most impressive, but if you look at that race and what he did, it really helps with the context of that whole day at Santa Anita on January 30th. And actually, we're including this just merely because this was right before February, even though this is a race in January. Definitely does warrant inclusion. So if you look at that race, the 2 other speed horses that were contending with Medina Spirit, Wipe the Slate and Parnelli, were pretty close. Parnelli wasn't as close to Medina Spirit and Wipe the Slate were, but those two went at it with each other in the beginning of the race. Parnelli dropped out, was beaten very significantly, almost 20 lengths at the end of the race, and Parnelli was not very much closer than Wipe the Slate. So, the 3 horses that were close to the lead in there, 2 of them dropped out, but the one that didn't drop out, Medina Spirit, wound up winning the race. And he battled Roman Centurion, who is a horse that caught a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people have some really strong, good feelings about Roman Centurion coming out of that race. He will be running this upcoming weekend in the San Felipe. There are a lot of people who think he's going to be a real force on the Derby Trail. And Hot Rod Charlie, who is a really hard trier, has not really gotten it done in any of these big stakes races, but we've seen him turn in some really strong efforts. Obviously at the Breeders' Cup, this was another race where he was only beaten a neck for first and a nose for second, so he's one himself that is a very strong contender. So for Medina Spirit to be able to go as fast as he did early, and the fractions weren't really that fast numbers wise, but that was a day where the speed was not carrying, specifically in this race, and for him to be able to hold on definitely is very impressive and warrants his inclusion.
On to number 2 now. That's where we have the winner of the Fountain of Youth, Greatest Honor. This horse has really improved down in Florida for Shug McGahee, winning 3 in a row at Gulfstream, including back-to-back graded stakes. Took the Holy Bull at the end of January, and then the Fountain of Youth on this last weekend of February. Certainly held in high regard in every single circle going forward on the Kentucky Derby, although it'll make sense in a moment why he's not number 1, and I'm fairly sure anyone listening knows why. But this horse has also done nothing wrong in his races in Florida, and he's done it in very impressive fashion every single time, closing from well out of it. In the Fountain of Youth, it looked like heading into the far turn, he was beaten, came into the stretch having to make up 5 lengths, which is not always the easiest thing to do at Gulfstream, and he still did it. Ran down some decent horses. Sure, the quality of competition also not overly high, but beat a really good horse in Drain the Clock, and some consistent horses in Papatoo and Tarantino behind him. So while they might not be A-listers on this Derby Trail, there's certainly horses that have ran respectable races every time, which does boost the credits of Greatest Honor, in my opinion. Of course, this is a horse who is going to be continually mentioned. His pedigree, his dam is a sister to 2 Belmont Stakes winners, and his sire Tappet has sired 3 or 4 Belmont winners to this point in his stud career. And while Tappet's 20, to sire that many and still have such successful progenies on the track as we speak is very incredible, and that gives you full confidence. At Greatest Honor, we're still really tapping into him, considering his races have been at a mile and a 16th, knowing that he's going to get to go to a mile and an 8th in the Florida Derby, and assuming he makes the Kentucky Derby a mile and a quarter, so on and so forth. That just has to make you really excited about this horse's potential, considering he hasn't even ran his best race yet. Certainly a big name to watch as we get closer to the Kentucky Derby, and as long as he stays healthy, he's already secured 60 points. He's very much secured a spot in the starting gate for this year's Derby.
And the final horse, Eric mentioned that this would be a fairly obvious pick, but you really can't go anywhere else with the top spot on this list, and that is Essential Quality, the winner of the Southwest Stakes this past weekend. A very impressive 4.5 length winner over a very wet, sloppy racetrack for him. And looking at him throughout his career, he has done nothing wrong. Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, Eclipse Award winner, and even before the Breeders' Cup, a Grade 1 winner in the Breeders' Futurity. And he's beaten good fields every single time. Obviously, the Breeders' Cup, he's running against the best 2-year-olds. And in the Breeders' Futurity, he beat Keep Me in Mind, who came back to run a really good third behind him in the Breeders' Cup. And then also following the Breeders' Cup, went on to be a stakes winner. So Essential Quality is not only doing it well and being very impressive when he's winning races, but he's also beating some really nice horses underneath him. Looking at this race this past weekend, like I mentioned, it was a wet track, definitely not the easiest conditions to run in, and he handled it just fine. He won by 4 1/4 lengths, beat Jackie's Warrior, who, it has been stated by us on the show many times, specifically more from Eric, as he really does like the talent that Jackie's Warrior has. He's a really talented racehorse. Jackie's Warrior doesn't want the route distances. He's going to be a good sprinter, but looking at him, he finished ahead of Jackie's Warrior. Spielberg, a horse for Bob Baffert, who has had his naysayers earlier on in the year, including myself, but he's really morphed into a really consistent, hard-trying racehorse in his past couple of races, and he ran a really good second in this race. But Essential Quality, really the big story in here, ran as good as you could have wanted him to, coming back off the layoff, first start since the Breeders' Cup, and he is also in the Kentucky Derby. He has 40 points, and with the way the Kentucky Derby works, even if some disaster were to happen in his next race and he doesn't get the points to get in, he will have more graded stakes earnings than whatever horse runs second in a stake and doesn't really have is tied with him with 40 points should this situation happen. So he's in the Kentucky Derby right now as long as he stays healthy and is able to make it to the starting gate sound. He will be in there, and he will be a real force on the first Saturday in May. I don't want to say one of these two horses, Greatest Honor or Essential Quality, is better than the other, but it's going to make for a really, really fun March and April as we go towards the first Saturday in May. And with that being said, that's it for the top 5 from the month of February. And taking a look at the overall top 5 at the end of the year of 2020, our top 5 was Essential Quality 1, Life is Good 2, Keep Me in Mind 3, Prime Factor 4, Hot Rod Charlie was 5. And the top 5 now following the months of January and February is Essential Quality number 1, Greatest Honor number 2, Life is Good 3, Medina Spirit 4, and Keep Me in Mind number 5, bumping out Prime Factor and Hot Rod Charlie and adding Greatest Honor and Medina Spirit to that top 5. So we will see you next week when we are recapping the weekend that includes the Tampa Bay Derby, the Gotham, and the San Felipe. Have a good one if you are betting those races, and we will see you next time.
Then Prime Factor and Greatest Honor as they turn for home. Up front, Drain the Clock trying to carry his speed. From the outside, Papa 2. Now Greatest Honor hitting high gear. And here he comes now. Greatest Honor finding his best stride right when he needs to. And he's going to run down Drain the Clock to win the Fountain of Youth.